VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker. How the hell are you guys? It's week 2. The Vikings will take on the San Francisco 49ers, the team they were supposed to lose to by 7 points last year on Monday Night Football, but ultimately the Vikings won by 5. So everybody, this show included, will hope for a repeat, an upset. It's just that this one feels a little bit more unlikely. I don't know. Maybe it's because the stomping of the Giants was kind of unforeseen. Ultimately, I'll make a prediction here in a little bit. I probably already tipped my hand. But I want to go into a few storylines about Vikings 49ers that maybe are overlooked a little bit. And then at the end, I'll give my prognostication. Spoiler, I do think the 49ers will win. But let me explain to you why. The first thing I want to get off my chest here, and this is a pro-Vikings statement or theory, is I've been thinking this whole damn week. So I've heard all the noise about, well, the Giants are just rotten. That's why the Vikings won. To which I say, who cares? The Vikings won by 22 points. When you have a team that's allegedly no good, even though nobody thought they were terrible going into week 1, now we think they're terrible, probably because Sam Darnold's Vikings beat them. This is exactly what you're supposed to do with a poor team that is on its way to a top 5 draft pick, is beat the shit out of them. That's what the Vikings did. They won by 3 scores. Give them a bad team, the Vikings beat them. And that's even if the Giants are a bad team. So I want to dispel that narrative about, well, the Vikings only won because the Giants aren't any good. They won handily. If Will Reichard had to hit a game-winning field goal for this to be a 1-0 Vikings team, yes, I would agree with that talker. But right now, I do not. So here's what I'm getting at. I keep thinking, and I've talked to Yannick Eckhart about this, who comes on the show about once a month, and I want to plant this seed, probably way too early for this bullshit, but what if the Vikings undercover are just really good? I've been thinking about that all week. Like, what if they are a replica of the 2017 team in terms of wins and losses around the bend? I think right now, at 1-0, you're like, hey, these Vikings are actually good. You tend to think of the ceiling as 10-7 and get in the postseason. But I'm talking about, what if they're really damn good? Like, that defense against the Giants was not a mirage. It made the Giants look bad because it's a good defense rather than an indictment on Daniel Jones being Daniel Jones. What if the defense does not relent? What if Sam Darnold is the real deal? It just took 6 seasons for him to, blossom. It's basically a thesis that says, what if the offense is top 12? What if the defense is top 10? Special teams does their part. We know the head coach is fantastic. We never really talked about that at all on this show this summer. I don't think they talked about it on other shows. We kept thinking 7-10, 8-9. If they get frisky, maybe 9-8, 10-7, get in the playoffs. But what if we've looked at this thing the wrong way the whole time? And I think if they did beat the 49ers and then somehow beat the Texans next week, we could look back on this little theory and start to wonder, have we just not recognized the good football team before our eyes this entire time? And the only reason I say this is if you look at the depth chart, if you can forgive the misgivings of defensive tackle, where Jerry Tillery is your solution this offseason, right next to Harrison Phillips, who's pretty damn awesome. If you can forgive the lack of a shutdown cornerback, there's really no deficiencies on the roster. We trust Kevin O'Connell with the offensive line, even if the interior gets blown up by Dexter Lawrence. The linebackers are good. The safeties are deep as hell. The edge rusher is the deepest room we've had since 2015 or so. Quarterback is a huge question mark, but if Sam Darnold continues this reclamation story, the sky is the limit. Receivers are good. Aaron Jones looked great. Hawkinson will be back in a month or so. So I want to plant that seed right here, plant that flag and say, what if the Vikings are actually really good? And I'm talking like 12-5, 13-4. We'll probably come back down to earth after this game or the Texans game, but I wanted to get that out there. All right, the next little storyline for the Vikings is Sam Darnold versus his old team. All week, Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan, Darnold's former teammates from like 9 months ago, 10 months ago. So this guy's awesome. This guy's so talented. They've just been banging the drum on Sam Darnold, and it leads me to believe that the reason Darnold left there is either A, they couldn't afford the $10 million the Vikings paid him, or Darnold said, you know what, I know I can start for at least 5 games when they draft their quarterback, and I can showcase what I got. And that's why he scooted out of San Francisco and landed with these Vikings. But I bring up the Darnold former employment angle because outside of Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold should know this brand of 49ers better than anybody else on the planet. Darnold practiced against them. He knows the clubhouse, probably knows the damn playbook. So he's going to be familiar with this defense, and I'll be damned if that's not some sort of inherent advantage. So I don't know if this is like a total endorsement that Darnold's going to play just like he did against the Giants, but he has that built-in advantage of playing against his old team after last week playing at his old stadium where he had started 20 games, MetLife Stadium. And then in week 5, we get to London against the Jets. He's playing against the team that drafted him. There's like this built-in redemption tour for Sam Darnold, and I'm here for it. So remember that he just played for these 49ers. Now he's playing against them. He should know them better than most. The other one that's undercover that I don't know if anybody's really brought up seriously is the Vikings are one snap away from playing against Joshua Dobbs. One fun fact about this offseason is the 49ers and Vikings basically looked at each other, kind of did the Spider-Man meme, and swapped QB2s. Sam Darnold came into the Twin Cities. Joshua Dobbs exited, ended up in San Francisco. It's almost like they traded Dobbs for Darnold. But if Brock Purdy takes a shot, we saw a lot of injuries around the league. Fantasy football managers can attest. In week 1, Dobbs mania would be back. Hopefully not, but it would get a honest-to-goodness look at US Bank Stadium. He is the QB2, and he could end up playing if Purdy was on the turf for however long. So remember that Dobbs is on that team now, and we all know he's got about a game or 2 in him per season where he looks pretty badass. Another unsung factoid I've tried to pound it home on Twitter this week is somehow, some way, it has been 32 years since the 49ers won a football game in the state of Minnesota. I do not know how to explain that stat. If this was like the Jets or some shit like that, or the Browns, I'd be like, oh yeah, that team is no good. They've never been good in my lifetime. But here you go. The 49ers were like the team when I was a kid. And I don't know what happened in the 90s, the 2000s, 2010s, and recently, they can't win at the Metrodome or US Bank Stadium. They have lost 7 consecutive games in Minnesota, and there's no rhyme or reason. This is not pounding the chest as the Vikings a superior franchise, or anything of the sort. It's just really strange that the Vikings have the 49ers number when they come to town. So all streaks got to end. Maybe this one does fall. But somehow, some way, the 49ers just do not play well in Minnesota, and don't you forget it. All right, a couple more here. Now, these are in the weeds types of stats. We reference it somewhat frequently on VikesNow, is the turnover battle. Now, it is very obvious that when a team wins the turnover battle in a given football game, at any level of football, you have a better chance of winning. Duh, we get it. However, the Kevin O'Connell brand of Vikings has the most severe variance of winning and losing dependent on the turnover battle. So, Kevin O'Connell showed up, 2 years and 7 months ago, start of the 2022 season. Since he took over, when his team, the Vikings, wins the turnover battle or breaks even, the Vikings are 18-0. Absolutely unblemished when they win the turnover battle or split with the opposing team. On the other hand, when the Vikings lose the turnover battle, they are 3-14 under Kevin O'Connell. So it's almost as rudimentary of when you watch the Vikings game, like for instance, when C.J. Ham fumbled on the first drive, we all rolled our eyes. Here we go. This is 2023 all over again. That should feel like a little bit of doomsday inside your body because the Vikings just don't really win under O'Connell when they, don't win the turnover battle. Thankfully, last week, they rebounded nicely, split the damn thing. There were 2 turnovers by the Vikings, 2 by the Giants, of course. Voila, the Vikings won, 28-6. So, it's Vikings football as of late, and showing no signs of changing anytime soon, until it does, is just follow the turnover battle. That's all you got to do. If the turnovers start to flood into the stat sheet for the Vikings in a bad way, they ain't winning that son of a bitch. They're going to lose. If they are able to keep pace or force their own turnovers or protect the football on offense and special teams, bada bing, the Vikings are going to win. It's really that elementary, and it's really weird that the Vikings are the one team with this wild-ass variance, 18-0 versus 3-14. Finally, another stat just like that. This kind of goes back to the Zimmer days too, but I have sectioned it off to Kevin O'Connell. When the Vikings score first in a single football game under Kevin O'Connell, they are 15-1. When you use that criteria for the rest of the NFL, only one team is better, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. When the Chiefs score first in the last 2.1 seasons, they are 18-1. So there are two things you can monitor and kind of get the feel of a Vikings game almost immediately. Is A, do they score first? If the answer is yes, the Vikings are probably going to win under this brand of leadership. If you need more evidence, watch the turnovers. Are the Vikings protecting the football, and or are they forcing turnovers? Andrew Van Ginkel, how you doing? The sweet pick six against the Giants sealed the deal. So scoring first and the turnover battle are like these statistical hallmarks, like benchmarks of Vikings football, and it's just the way it is. There's not like I really don't know if they pound that home each week, like, hey, let's score first. Look at our record. I know for damn sure they pound home the turnover stuff, but that's probably why they do it, is because there is an extreme differential between the Vikings' wins and losses with turnovers and scoring first. All right, all of that somewhat interesting information, at least according to me. I do think the 49ers will defeat the Vikings. I have the prediction at 27-17. But like I do each week for VikingsTerritory.com, I go around and I ask about a dozen or so Vikings fans and then our own writers. And Vikings fans are more optimistic than you would think about this game. I asked 14 folks on Vikings Twitter, hey, what's your feeling on this game? Give me a score. And fans evenly split at 7 said the Vikings, 7 said the 49ers. Our writers went a little bit more heavy towards the 49ers and ultimately, I think, picked the 49ers to win by 3 or so. So I will say if the Vikings do not win against the 49ers, they've built up enough goodwill in week 1 by beating the shit out of the Giants that going 1-1 for a team that is counting the days until J.J. McCarthy is back in 2025, I don't think it's the end of the world if the Vikings lose to the 49ers. But I will say this right now, no matter what happens, if the Vikings get beat 42-3 on Sunday, I still think they're going to find a way to split this miniature homestand 1-1. Whether that's beat the 49ers now, lose next week to the Texans, or vice versa. I don't think the Vikings, no matter what they did last week, I don't think they're going to go 0-2 in this homestand. They were 2-6 at home last year, which was the worst single-season home record for the Vikings since 2013, and I think that was an outlier. So I think there's going to be an even split between 49ers and Texans. Let's just see if they win the first one out of the gate to make everything easier. All right, we will be back Sunday night with Brevin Bain. I might have some others on to chat about reaction. Win, lose, or draw, we will talk about the aftermath of Vikings 49ers and where to go from there. Skol, baby.